Hey everybody, welcome to Maple Masala. Alright guys, welcome back to another episode of Maple Masala, and we're back with the first episode of 2024. I'm really sorry I have been missing out. Life just happened and things just got into the way. And so I had to look after them first. But yeah, now that I have some time with me, I can be back on the show and give you more content and more experiences to share. Okay, so today we have a really special guest, and she has been such a great friend in my life. And I just met her probably a year ago, I think. So we have Leena on the show with us.
Hey, everybody.
Welcome. Woo.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us. So yeah, Leena, why don't you give us an introduction and we'll go from there.
Okay, well, my name is Leena, and I'm a full-time mom and a full-time wife and full-time daughter-in-law, whatever you want to say, sister. I got married and I moved to the States, and I've been here for the last couple of years, and I just had a son a few months ago.
Woo,
Shout out
congratulations.
to my little sweetheart Sai and to my husband,
Yep.
and and I'm here, and I'm from Canada.
Oh yeah.
But,
yes. So yeah, Leena's a Canadian, born into a Gujarati family, and we're gonna talk about Leena's experiences growing up as a child of an immigrant. Even though she's a Canadian, I'm pretty sure she went through some cultural things in her life, some cultural experiences that she has, and yeah, we're just gonna explore those experiences and all the whole journey. Okay.
For sure.
Yeah, so Leena, let's get started with your family's history. Like, why did they choose Canada to immigrate to?
So from what I know, my mom's dad, my grandpa, came when I think immigration had opened up back in the day, and you know, you just try your luck, and he came, and then I think he was here for a couple years working. And then he sponsored and brought my grandma and all 5 of his children, one being my mom. She's the oldest. Okay. And then as for my dad, I think one of his sisters had gotten married and immigrated to Canada. Oh, okay. And then with that, in order, you know, for the rest of her family to have a better life, she sponsored the rest of her family, which included my dad. And he also ended up here in Canada. Okay. So my mom was like about 10 years old when she came to Canada. And my dad was, I think, like 16, 17-ish when he came to Canada, and you know, they met here. They've been here in Canada ever since, and here I am now.
Yeah, right. Yeah. No, that's really interesting. Okay, so I wasn't aware that it was your grandparents who initially came here, and then the family started. Okay. Yeah. How did your parents meet though? Was it an arranged marriage?
No, so it was not an arranged marriage.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So it's actually kind of a sweet story. I always think of it like a Bollywood movie. Oh. But so my mom and dad met at Garba. Okay. Right? And you know, boy meets girl, girl meets boy, and then they fall in love. And then, you know, they secretly date for a few years. And then, you know, they wanted to get married. And I don't know what the deal was, but both my parents are Gujarati. Both of them are Patels. But, you know, back in the day, families had, you know, love marriages weren't as popular as they are now. So, you know, they had some resistance, I guess. And so they ran away and got married, actually, on Valentine's Day.
Oh, my gosh.
It's about to be almost 35 years or something like that for them. This Valentine's Day is their anniversary.
That's so cool.
So they ran away and they got married. My dad picked up my mom on her lunch break, and they went down to City Hall and got married. And he dropped her back at work, and she went home. And then, you know, they let the bomb go. And then everybody found out. And yeah, and now we're here.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, so that's how they met and fell in love, and
okay,
you know, that's what they did. They were gutsy. I don't have that much in me to do that, to run away and get married.
Wow. And I think you don't have to, I guess.
I got lucky. I got lucky. I really did. I found a really great husband.
That's
but,
great.
Yeah, if it was up to me, I don't think I could.
It does require a lot of guts. I mean, yeah, that's crazy. So, like, your mom... So after they got married, your mom went to your dad's place?
Yeah, so my mom moved in. Well, what happened was, I think my dad's parents, my grandparents kind of gave in, right? Okay. And then they got married. And then, you know, my grandma, she's like, until you're not married in front of God, you're not really married. So she made them get married, have a Hindu wedding ceremony, a small one.
Right.
And, you know, they got married, they moved in. And, yeah, my mom moved in with my dad and his family. And
that's great.
You know, that's where they started off.
Okay.
They started off in a little condo. Okay. In Toronto.
Oh, okay.
And then, you know, a couple of years later, I was born, and then, you know, kind of, then they had my brother a couple of years later after that, and my other grandparents did come around eventually.
Okay.
And, you know, they accepted my dad, and everything's kosher, and my grandpa and my dad they're best friends now. You know, they hang out all the time, and
that's good.
You know, they're tight, and yeah, everything just kind of worked out.
That's interesting. That's really interesting. I know a lot of love stories happen in Garba. So for those of you who don't know, Garba is like a traditional dance for Gujarati people?
So it's like a festival that happens, right? There's the 9 days, right? That
for the Navratri.
For Navratri, yeah. So Navratri happens for 9 days, and I guess it's just like a celebration of good fortune and, you know, love and prosperity. And so in Toronto, we have these big Garba celebrations, right? Yeah. And everybody gets together, and, you know, they have they do what they do, and they have fun.
Right.
And so you get to meet a lot of different Gujarati people.
Yeah.
Right. You know, after I got to an age where, you know, your family starts to ask you when you're gonna get married, maybe you should start dating somebody, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
You know, my mom and dad, they would be like, oh, why don't you try to find somebody at Garba like we did? And, you know, you're just like, okay, but like I that just never really was a thing for me. But I mean, a lot of people do meet there.
Yeah.
It's you know, everybody in your culture kind of ends up in one place, and you know, it's a great way to meet somebody,
to interact, or just make friends.
I made a ton of friends at Garba, like growing up, and you know, it's something I've been going to and celebrating with my family since I was a child. Okay. I love dressing up. You know, you get to wear the chariot choris and the bangles and get all dressed up, and you know, so I've loved going since I was a little girl.
Okay, that's interesting. That's great to see that even though you were born a Canadian, you're still really in touch with your roots, and that's great, and you enjoy that part. That's good. Which leads me to the question: how was it like for you in your school life? Like, did you face a lot of backlash, or like, how was it?
I think when I was really little, we lived in Toronto, and you know, as you know, in Toronto, it's very multicultural, and there's a lot more people who look like you, right? So a lot more people are like aware of like your culture and how things may work, where you know, they don't really question too much because it's kind of a normal thing, right? But then, you know, I ended up moving to Barrie, which is a smaller town outside of Toronto, about 30-40 minutes, and there, you know, there wasn't a lot of Indian people or a lot of people of color when I was living there. Now there is, but when I was younger, there really wasn't. So there was, you know, people had a lot of questions. Like a lot of my friends would have a lot of questions, and they wouldn't really know what to ask, right? Or like how to, or they're just not aware, right? And you know, if you haven't grown up amongst like different cultures, you're just not aware, right? So it's kind of like here. I mean, we live in a very small town in Mississippi, and you know, there isn't a lot of culture, other diversity, I guess, right? There isn't a lot of diversity, so a lot of people are just unaware, right? They know it exists, but they haven't been introduced to it or anything like that, right? So a lot of people just have questions. Like, I remember I was in like the 2nd grade, and one of my friends, she's like, Leena, why is like, it was an innocent question, right? Like, you know, your kid, you don't curious. Know, right? Yeah. She's like, why are the inside of your hands whiter than the outside of your hands, right? And I'm just like, oh my God. And then I'm thinking, like, what are you talking about, right? Like, you know, for me, like, it's always been like that, right? Like, you know, like, I don't know, like, I was just born like that. Like, what am I supposed to, like, how am I supposed to educate you on, like, you know, being, like, in the 2nd grade? Like, I don't know, right?
Like, I have as much knowledge as you do. Like, I don't know.
You know, like, why are your hands white on both sides? Like, I don't know. Like, you know, like, you told me that, like, right? But it was, like, you know, that was, like, kind of the beginning of me, like, you know, even though like being born there and things like that, like, you know, you don't think about it, right? That you're different from everybody else, even though you were born there. Right. But, sometimes people make you very aware that you're very different. Right. But yeah.
Okay, that's really interesting. Well, that was
like I honestly I did not have an answer for that little girl. Like, what am I supposed to tell her, right? Or like my friend at that time, or like, you know, my mom, she would put like shock in like a roti, and she would like roll it up like a burrito, and she'd be like, oh, I made you burritos for lunch, right? And I'm like, oh yeah, like my friends are gonna think I'm so cool, like I got a burrito for lunch, right? Like, you know, instead of like a PB&J sandwich or like, you know, whatever sandwiches like these kids eat, right? Yeah. And then so I'm like, oh yeah, I got a burrito, like I would be so cool. And then like open my lunch and damn, it's like shock roti, and you're just like, come on, mom, like, oh my God. And then your friends are like, oh, like, what is that? And you're just like don't even worry about it right now. Like, I'm just as offended as you are, like at my lunch. Right.
Oh
but like goodness. Now, like, you know, my coworkers, right, they'd be like, oh, Leena, we're gonna go get Indian food, and like whatever, and I'm just like, well, I don't want to eat that, like I eat every day, right?
Yeah.
Like now it's just like so mainstream,
exactly,
right?
Yeah.
And like
butter chicken is just something that we eat almost every day.
Yeah, like now you have kids who love eating like butter chicken, you know, and like it's normal now, but it was definitely not as normal at that growing up, like taking butter chicken and rice, or like dal and rice, or like whatever the case is. But like, you know, your mom's gonna feed you what she's gonna pack you, right? At the end of the day, like you're just gonna have to man up and eat it. Like,
you just have to accept it.
Or like you can't find. I think the worst part for me is like, how do I explain this to somebody, right? Like I know what I'm eating, right? But like to somebody else, like, you know, to one of my friends who's like who doesn't know, like how do you explain that to like like, oh, what are you eating? Rice and dal, and you're like dal, and then they're like, what is that? And you're just like, I don't know, like my mom makes it once a week and I eat it, right? Like that's what it is. Like I don't know, right? Like how am I supposed to explain that to you?
Oh my gosh, this is so hilarious.
Like, you know what I mean? Like my friend used to ask me what like roti was, and I was like, it's a tortilla. And like I used to go home and ask my mom, like, mom, like what do I tell my friends, like when you pack me like lunch, right? And she's like, oh, tell them like roti is a tortilla, and I'm like, oh, okay, like all right, it's a tortilla, like that's what that is.
It actually is, sort of.
Well, yeah, it's our version of a tortilla. Yeah, exactly. Right? Like, except that's what that is.
Yeah, except it's just made of wheat flour or some other flour. But
like regardless, right? Like it's like I guess like, you know, you had to find like a common ground to explain it. Yeah. But then when you're that young, you think what your family does, or that's your normal. Yeah. Right. Right. But then like when you go out into the world, it's not the normal, right? Because the normal world around you is so different. At least it was like when I was growing up. Like now again, like, you know, being South Asian and having like all these cultures are becoming more and more mainstream. Yeah. So people are just more aware of things now.
Yeah, that's true. And I think it's mostly because of the growing impact or the growing awareness through like Instagram and stuff like that.
Social media. Like, you know, like you're reaching a lot more people who are becoming a lot more aware of other cultures and, you know, diversity and things that are, you know, that are normal to us and that wasn't normal to other people before, but it is now. Yeah. Right? But like growing up, like when I was like 5, 6, 7, you know, up until I got into university, right? Oh, like a lot of like my Indian heritage or my Gujarati life, or like, you know, that part of my life wasn't always like the normal outside of my home, right? Like with my friends, or you know, like, you know, being in school, and like, if you can believe, in my high school I was like the only Patel up until my brother went to high school. Wow, really? Right? Which is like not normal. Like, you know, now you like there's like 100 Patels in one school, right? And then like for me, like that wasn't it, right? I mean, like again, I grew up like, you know, a little bit outside of Toronto, but like, you're like you're like the only Indian kid in your whole school, right? And everyone just knows who you are, and
they don't even have to like they just know when they are talking about you. Like they just know that, okay, Leena is a different person. Like
like they just know, right? Yeah, like my teachers wouldn't notice like other people missing from their class, but they noticed when you weren't there that day, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Like my teacher would be like, "Where were you?" And my other friend would be like, "I wasn't here yesterday either." And they'd be like, "Oh well, we didn't notice." Right? Like, okay.
Exactly. Yeah. Right? That's what I mean.
It's true, right? Like that's what it was. Like you just tend to stand out a little bit more.
Right. That's true. I think we're proud of that. And I mean,
I took it as an advantage, right? Like, like I'm proud to be who I am and where I come from. And, there's nothing wrong with that, right? Yeah. And you're a mix of like different cultures, like being Canadian or, being born on this side of the world. But I have two Indian parents, right? Yeah. And so that makes me Indian. Yeah. Or as much as it makes me Canadian, it makes me Indian. Right?
Yeah.
So,
right.
I mean,
that makes sense.
You can't just ignore it.
Yep.
I mean, it's all over, right?
It's like there.
Long black hair and darker skin tone, right? Like, you know, you can't ignore that fact, right? Like, it is what it is.
It is, and,
you just either be proud of it. And, that's where you have to kind of go with it.
Exactly, yeah. And I think for some people, it might take some time for them to accept that. Because I've come across some people who are, like, trying to pretend that they're not Indian, but, like...
Or not as Indian as they, like, as they actually are. I'm guilty of that. Growing up, I would, not, like, plan to, like, be being Indian or me liking Indian food as much as I love Indian food. I love Gujarati food, right? Like, now I go out of my way to eat it before I get, like, oh, look, I have to eat that. Like,
find ways to avoid it.
You try to, like, avoid it, right? But, like, right. I mean, it took me a long time because it's, like, a struggle, right? Because you're growing up, you're trying to fit in with your friends and
fitting in,
you want to seem as quote unquote normal as possible, right? But like normal is whatever you want to make it at now, right? And I think the world is a little more accepting now than it was like before.
Yes,
right?
it definitely is, especially after like all these racist attacks and all of the things that we hear in the news. People are becoming more accepting.
Aware, and I think like people were always like accepting, but I think it was just that like a lot of people were just afraid to ask questions, right? And now like I think instead of like people asking questions, people just make more people aware, like you're sharing more through social media, right? Like you see like Diwali being celebrated all over the world, right?
It's a national holiday in or not national, it's a holiday in New York now. Officially.
Russia Bandhan's a holiday in Brampton. It's like it's getting there, right? And I mean, Diwali's like our Christmas and New Year's, right? It's a special time for us, right?
It definitely is,
But when I was growing up, like people are like, "Oh, why weren't you at school today?" I was like, "Oh, it's Diwali, right?" And you expect them to know what that is, as you know what Christmas is, but they have no idea.
They have no clue, And
then you have to go and explain it, and blah blah blah, and figure it out.
Right.
But
That's interesting. This also leads me to ask you another question.
Sure.
Just as much as you have included your Indian roots, how far did your parents go to like put the Canadian roots into you as well?
I think they, as much as like we are Indian and Gujarati and we do all the Gujarati things and celebrate all of the things that we do, we also celebrated Christmas and Easter and like as the holidays came around, we did everything and anything, and I think that was one thing I love that my parents did, right? Like ever since I was little, Christmas has been one of my favorite holidays, right? As much as I love Diwali, I love Christmas. Yes, like we don't go to church, but we do know why Christmas is important. It's celebrated, why it's important, right? We put up the tree, we make a turkey, we make stuffing, gravy, my family does all that, and we exchange presents, and we're thankful for the people we have in our lives, and we celebrate Thanksgiving, right? All my cousins, we all get together and we make a turkey and we're thankful and we hang out, and then Easter rolls around and we celebrate that too, and in my family, a lot of my cousins married outside of our a culture, right?
Yeah.
And so like we became accepting of like, you know,
Other
all
cultures.
of my other brothers and sister-in-laws
Mm-hmm.
and whatever, right? And you know, as like my nieces and nephews are a part of our lives, you know, we try to include everybody and everything, right? And so like our parents, they have never been like, oh no, we don't do that because we're Indian, right?
They never resisted.
They I mean, to an extent, right? Like, you know, certain things like boyfriends and girlfriends, you know, that was like a big thing that we didn't talk about until like I turned like 20, and they're like, why don't you have a boyfriend? And you're like, you didn't let me date my entire life. Like, you're like, no boys, right? And like, you know, like, and like certain like cultural things, I guess, right? But like with my parents, I think, you know, because they did grow up here, right? Like my mom, she was 10, right? She went to high school, she went to elementary school, she went to college,
well aware of the culture,
like, you know, my dad too, he went to high school in Toronto and whatever, and they grew up here, so they were already immersed in that like Western culture, right? So they knew that, okay, they're gonna live through that, right? So we rather prepare them for that, or rather like let it be a part of their lives instead of like taking away from it, right? Like, you know, like, I mean, I went for sleepovers, and I had friends who slept over in my house.
Okay, that's
you know,
good.
I took trips with my friends in university, and you know, like my parents, they were always a little reluctant, let's say, right? Because you know, they care, right? As Indian parents, they tend to care maybe a little more. Right? I don't know about other cultures. Maybe we all have the same type of parents. Like, I don't know, but I'm speaking from my own experience, right? Like, it was always harder for me to like get like for them to be okay with me doing something, but I think like once we got through that experience together, and they realized that, hey, she's okay, like everything's good, right? And she had this amazing experience, then doing it like the next time or doing something similar was all, they were okay with it, you know? So like we all kind of evolved together. Right?
That's a way to put it.
Like, obviously, like, you know, my grandparents, they were a lot more not stricter, but like, you know, like
a little, they might have shown some resistance to like,
a little more resistant than my parents, right? And you know, my parents are a little less resistant than them, but like then there's me with my child, like I'm gonna be a little more like not as like resistant as my parents are, right? Like, you know,
so like as the generation passes down, the resistance is gonna go down.
But I mean, like, it's still up to you about how much you want to retain your culture, right? Like for me, like when I got married to Panpan's also Gujarati, right? I got lucky, right? You know, I had that conversation with my mom and dad, right? Well, they had the conversation with me that, hey, it's your life, you do what you want to do, but you know, we would prefer you to marry someone within our culture, right? Especially being like the same religion or whatever. And I think like a lot of parents hope for that, right? Like, there's nothing wrong with it, you know? So like, you know, as I was dating and things like that, you know, it's like you don't go out of your way to like date anybody or like, you know, find somebody. I mean, if it happens, it's great. It's right? Great. You know, it's always there that, you know, when you start talking to someone like, oh, look, it's better, you know, it kind of like checks off a lot more of your boxes, right?
I get what
but
you mean.
But it wasn't like I was exclusively only dating like Gujarati people, right? Like it wasn't, or like trying to find somebody Gujarati wasn't like my only goal, right? It's just,
so you were open to like more cultures.
I was, right? And whatever came of that, I was gonna have to deal with it, right? And then, but like I said, I got very lucky. And you know, turns up on Gujarati, and you know, towards like as I got a little bit older, like past like 25ish, I think I like, you know, tried to find somebody more closer to my culture, I guess, because you know, it wasn't so much about like what my parents wanted, but it was for me, like
for yourself, because you will be able to relate more, I guess.
Like relate more, a little bit more, I guess. And then, you know, for me, it was just about like, I like being Indian, right? And I want my kids to like, you know, my like now my son, right? Like, you know, he's gonna grow up like loving where we or like at least like hopefully he loves that we're Indian, or like, you know, whatever it is, right? Like I'm not gonna force it on him or anything, but you know, I think it's just it's been nice.
That's good.
I think it just makes things a little bit easier.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, I have cousins who married outside of our culture, and, you know, my brother-in-laws and them, they're beautiful, amazing people, right? And their blended families are so beautiful, and they make it work. Right?
Yeah.
They do. They make it work.
That's
they
what it
teach
comes
their
down
kids
to.
everything.
Yeah.
And, I mean, it just depends on how much you want, how much effort you're willing to put in, right? To blend your families, right?
Yeah.
You know, and for me, I mean, like I said, I think I just got lucky.
Yeah, right. You don't have to put in much effort compared to...
And honestly, if I did have to put in effort, I would.
Yeah.
Right? Because, you know, you got to be proud from where you come from, right?
Yeah,
and,
absolutely.
You know, it's a part of who you are.
Yeah.
And you got to embrace it. And if I would have had to put in a little more effort than I do now, I mean, it's okay.
Yeah.
Right? But, yeah.
You would go that extra mile if you see that your partner is also accepting.
Exactly.
Right. It has to be a two-way thing, not just
exactly,
one
right?
way.
And I mean, that's just like a testimony to the people who do have blended families and how hard they work, you know, to create a safe, growing environment for their own families. Right?
Yeah.
But, I mean...
Yeah,
it just worked out for us. Like,
yeah, no, I'm super proud of that part. Like, when I see you guys, I see that you celebrate. Like, I saw your baby. I was there for your baby shower, and it was a mix of your like the Western culture as well as the Gujarati prayers and everything were included. So I was really glad to see that, and it's just a lot more fun to see like a version that comes out when we mix the two cultures.
Yeah, I think you try to have the best of everything.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Like, that's all you can like try to do. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, we want to have fun and play games and stuff.
Yeah.
And, you know, traditionally, like, you know, Gujarati baby showers, like, I don't know if they do that. Maybe they do that now, or they never did. I don't know. But it's mostly, you know, you do a ceremony and people have food and that's it. And we're like, well, we're gonna try to do a little bit of everything.
Yeah, I think that was great. I really enjoyed my time there. The games were fun.
I'm glad you had a good time. I'm glad.
And the food was good too. It was I haven't tried much of the Gujarati food, but there was a lot of like different things that I've never seen before. Yeah. So that was good.
We had a lot of few dishes, but that was a very traditional Gujarati meal. But you know, we try to blend as much as we can.
Right.
You know,
that's good. That's really good. Okay, this one's really interesting. So I've had this question for a long time, and I've wanted to ask this to somebody, but I just didn't want to like offend them.
Okay.
But yeah, I don't want to offend any Canadians or any Indians, but yeah, like, do you think the Canadian people have any misconceptions about the Indian people, Indian culture that you want to clear out, or?
I don't know. I can't speak for everybody, right? Like, I don't know what people know or don't know.
Right.
Yeah. But I would like to say that, like, if you're going to order a chai latte, just say chai latte. Do not call it a chai tea latte, because that is just a little bit insulting.
Oh my gosh.
Like, I'm sorry, if I'm standing behind you at Starbucks and I hear you order a chai tea latte, I will clench my teeth, okay? And I will be like, oh my God. What? How? Why? And I'm sure there's enough TikToks and Instagram reels and whatever post people are making that have clarified this. Chai just means tea.
So you're just saying tea.
Exactly. Or like naan bread. You know what? Naan is a type of bread, right? So like, why? Like, and again, there's enough TikToks and Instagram posts about it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That, like, I'm sure the world is aware. Okay. Right? Like, I think like, if
there's plenty knowledge out there. And you know what? We did say this in one of our episodes. I think it was episode 4. But yeah, we did mention this part, and because one of my friends, he works at a coffee shop, and so he would get some customers who would say chai tea, and he would correct them saying, this is chai, not chai tea.
Yeah, like, you know, we're just trying to help you, right? Like, it's just, you know, so you don't look like a fool.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly. Yep, exactly.
You know, like, I'm just, you know, but like, I really don't know if like what people know or don't know, right? But I think my best advice is like, ask questions, right? If you don't know, ask somebody you're comfortable asking. And if it's like a hard question to ask, you know, talk to a friend or ask and find out, because you're better off asking that hard question and understanding or getting the answer that you're looking for than assuming, right?
Yeah.
Because I think assuming is what gets like people into not trouble, but like, you know, into messy situations,
into hard situations,
right? Into like messy situations, right?
Right.
And I think
that
like
sense.
that is the difference, right? Because like, so like Indians, right? Like when people think about Indians, they you know, automatically like think about Punjabi people or the Patels or like whatever. But there's so many types of Indians.
Yeah,
right?
I know.
Like I don't even know all the types of Indians, but there's a lot of different types of Indians, right? There we have South Indian people. Yeah. We have people from Maharashtra. Yeah. Like I'm just talking Rajasthani. You know, there's like different types of Gujarati people. Okay. And personally, I didn't know that till like as I was growing up. I just thought everybody was a Patel when I was little, okay? Because guess what? My entire, like, you know, like, majority of the people I knew were Patels, and you're like 4 or 5 years old, and you're like, oh, every Gujarati's a Patel, but like,
because that's what you grew up with.
Yeah, but as I got a little bit older, I was corrected, and, you know, there's tons of different types of Gujarati people, right? You know, and even in Gujarat, like, me and Bond were 2 different types of Gujaratis, right? Okay. From, like, I guess where my family comes from, and from where his family come from, like, you know, certain things are different, certain foods are different, like we call certain foods different things, right? And like a lot of things I learned after I got married, and you know, I learned from his family, right? And a lot of hopefully he learned some things from my family, right? Like I don't know, but like
I hope he better.
Yeah, I'm sure he has. Hopefully they were good things. I don't know, but like you know, like so like that, right? So like I mean, like you ask and you shall receive like your answers, right? At the end of the day.
Yeah. Right? No, I'm pretty sure, he did learn some stuff, and you did too. But and there's no shame.
Exotic one day. They're like, you look so exotic.
Oh yeah, I've heard that a lot.
What do you mean exotic?
What?
Like I don't. I just, like do I look like a bird? Like I don't, like a flamingo? Like what is it? Right? Because for me, like think about it. Both my parents are Indian, right? So like I look as Indian as you can get, right? Like, you know, like I have, you know, a very melatonin skin tone. You know, I have long black hair. Like. What more do you want? Like, I'm pretty Indian looking as they come, right?
Why would you say exotic? Like, do I come from the Amazon forest?
Right, like, you know? But, like, again, that's just, like, you know, they're like I said, like living in a small town, you kind of I'm going through that phase all over again, right? Where like there's a lot of people who aren't exposed to that, right? Who are unaware, and you know they're learning, and you just have to like laugh it off sometimes, right? Like I don't get offended because like I understand, right? Like they don't know, or they never met like an Indian person or been exposed to that or like culture or whatever, right? So you kind of laugh it off, and you know you help them understand,
right? That's and there's no shame in that.
I've had people call me Princess Jasmine, and I'll be like, oh. I mean, I'm quite flattered that you think I look like Princess Jasmine, but I'm pretty sure,
I mean, I know. It's like one time I got complimented for my English, and I wasn't sure how to react. Like, should I be happy or should I be sad? Because that person doesn't know that we were ruled by the British for 200 years.
Right.
And,
well, like, for us, it's like, it's common knowledge, right? But, like, for a lot of people, it's not.
It's not,
like, you know, sometimes, like, we forget that. Like, how do you not know? But, like, you really don't.
But sometimes people genuinely don't know.
Well, I mean, I can tell you about a time, like, I was working, I lived in Toronto, like, after I went to university and stuff, and, you know, I worked in Toronto. Yeah. And I was working, and, so I'm an ultrasound tech, right? And I worked at this clinic. Yeah. And then, you know, a lot of the ladies that I worked with, they were all European. Right? Yeah. So, you know, some of them have accents, some of them don't, right? And whatnot. So we were all standing there, and you know, I was just waiting for like my patient, and like you know, waiting for a patient to come. Yeah. So you know, I got the paperwork, and I called out to my patient. This lady, she gets up, and she was like, "Oh, honey, I'll be fine. She speaks English," and I'm like, I'm like looking at my other coworker, like. I'm the only one who doesn't have an accent in this whole clinic. Like, I don't, what? Like, but like, you know, you can't take offense to it, right? Like, it is what it is. At the end of the day, she assumed that all the other European people, like, you know, working my coworkers, they all could speak perfect English, right? I mean, and it was the opposite, right? Yeah. Like, you know, like, so I mean, there's a little like, but like I said, you just can't assume things, right?
Yeah, right. Oh my gosh.
One lady thought I tanned to get this dark, like, you know, she was actually concerned for me, like, it was so sweet, and like, you know, if you can get past like the you know, the assumption, but like she was so sweet. She was like, honey, like, you're so beautiful, you don't need to like be tanning so much, you're gonna get skin cancer. And I'm looking at her like, what are you talking about? Like, I'm just like, what? I was like, I'm sorry, excuse me. And she's like, oh, like, you know, she's like, you're beautiful, like, you don't need to be tanning so much. And I'm like, no, I was like, you don't. I was like, and I looked at my other coworker, and we were just like stunned because she's looking at me. She's like, what are you talking about? And I was like, no, ma'am, like, I was just born this way. And she's like, and then she looked at me like she was all confused. She's like, what do you mean? You were just born this way. And I'm like, so both my parents come from this place in this world where they're close to the equator, and everybody tends to have a darker skin tone, right? So like, they're both Indian, so that makes me Indian. So, you know, like, I'm just kind of born with this very nice skin complexion, right? That people want to pay for, apparently. But, like,
exactly. Yeah.
You know, and then there's my mom, stay out of the sun, like, don't get too dark, right? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, it's the opposite. I want to tell people it's the opposite in India. Like, people consider the fair skin color to be more like of a superior,
like, attractive.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Like,
but now it's changing in India too.
I mean,
I heard that there was this cream kind of a company, Fair and Lovely. Yeah. And oh my God, they had a big lawsuit. Yeah. And they had to change the name to like Glow and Lovely or something. I don't know.
I don't think that made it any better. But it is what it is.
Well, why is it even there? Like, why do you have to like use treatments and all of those? But I mean,
to each their own, right? Yeah, like, exactly. I mean, I use a brightening like cleanser every day, not to make myself look any lighter than I am, but just to give my skin this glowy, nice texture. Exactly, okay, but like, you know, I mean, to each their own. And I think the world or mainstream like social media or advertising, whatever you want to call it, they're doing a great job of being inclusive. Not to only like body types, but like to people of like skin colors, like being more inclusive towards, like, you know, even in the Indian community, you see more like people who are not all light or not all dark, or, you know, everybody's a little bit of everything, right?
Exactly.
Which is like, you're representing the general population, and the general population, they do not all look the same.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Even here, I mean, even in America and in Canada, it's like people have all types of skin color. I've seen the ones who have like a heritage from England or Scotland. They're more fair than the other ones.
Than you know, other cultures. And I mean, like, to each their own. Right? If you're happy the way you look, then that's great. I'm happy for you. Right.
That's awesome. Well, you kind of covered the topic, which I was gonna ask you for the next question, but my question was gonna be about how, like, are you experiencing the same thing all over again, having moved to America from Canada?
A little bit. I mean, I think it's all different, right? America and like Canada in itself, everywhere you go, everything's a little more different, right? But moving to the South has been a super big change, right? Because I've never really been to the South, right? Until since I had to come here, because I got married, obviously. But the culture, the Southern culture is just all different from like, it's different from New York or California,
from the rest
or
of America,
you know, from being up north, like even in the States, like, it's super different,
right?
And it's a learning curve. I'm learning. You know, people have different dialects, so I'm learning different things are called different things from what I'm used to, right? you know, I have to learn about miles from kilometers.
Oh, yeah. That was the hardest one for me too.
I still so my GPS till this day, I've been living here for 2 years, is still in kilometers.
Oh,
because like when I'm driving and I'm using my GPS, I don't know what 3/4 of a mile is, like how far that is. But if you tell me like that's 2 kilometers away, I know when to get into the right lane. Okay, but if you're telling me, oh, a 1/4 mile, I don't know. Okay, I've been driving since I was 16 years old. Okay, and like, I'm sure eventually I will learn. I will learn eventually, and I am learning. Okay, because obviously I'm gonna live here, and I have to make a conscious effort to learn. But I mean, it's hard, man. The whole world lives in like
kilometers.
Yeah. And same thing with
the temperature.
Yeah. Fahrenheit. My mom talks to me all the time. Oh, Leena, is gonna be like 60 something degrees, and I'm just like, I don't know exactly what that means.
What's 60?
He's like, it's high 60s, and I'm like, oh, okay.
I know. My mom's
like, oh, sure. And then like, you know, like my watch and my phone is still set to Celsius, and then I look and I'm like, oh, okay, like that makes sense, you know. But like, I know, like, again, I'm learning, right? Like, I know like 80s and 90s means it's hella hot outside. It's super hot, right?
That's what I learned. And
anything below 60 means it's cold. And you know, 70s apparently great. So like, I'm learning. Right?
Me too. I'm getting there. I know. The other day I was like talking to my mom, and I asked her, like, I told her the temperature is gonna be nice. It's 17 degrees, and mom's like, "What's 17? Like, well, is it cold?" I'm like, "No, it's pleasant." And she's like, "No." And then I had to convert it into Fahrenheit, and then she's like, "Okay, that's probably around 60 or something." 70. I don't know.
Like somewhere. I still don't know, right? Yeah. But like, again, like I'm learning, right? Yeah. And then like even at work, like I learn something new every time, and I think my coworkers, they get a kick out of it. They're like, I'm like, you didn't know that, and I was like, well, I don't know. Right? Like, it's a whole new world, it's right? New, like what we call like Coke and stuff pop, right? Yeah. Right. Here people call it soda. Right? If you tell me,
I didn't know that.
Leena, can I have a soda? I'm going to give you a can of club soda.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Exactly. Like, that's what I'm going to do. Because,
or ginger ale.
Yeah. Right? But, like, for me, a club, like, soda means club soda. Yeah. Right? Like, that's where I'm at. Right? Yeah. And, you know, people are like, oh, like, do you want a soda? And I was like, no, like, can I have, like, a can of Coke, like, a pop? And they're like, yeah, that's what I asked you. And I'm like... Oh,
I know.
Right. Okay.
That one was new for me. Yeah, right? I didn't know soda was something that they used here.
Apparently, I have an accent, and I'm like, oh, okay. Well, like I don't know. I don't know. Do I sound like I have a Canadian accent? Apparently.
You do, yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I don't know, like, you know, for me, like I grew up in, like, Toronto, and, you know, everyone kind of sounds like you, like that, right?
So, obviously,
so, like, you don't really, like, hear it as much, but, like, you know, like, to me, down here, I think people have an accent here, right?
Yeah, they do, yes. And I think the reason why they say that you have a different one is because they're all used to the southern one,
right?
Which is, like...
So, like, I'm the difference, right? Like, to them. So, it's all learning.
It's so hard to... Sometimes it's hard to understand their accent because like they would talk about now I'm pretty good at it, but when I initially came here I was like, what's there was this person and he said something about crime, and he just said cram. And I was like, what's
but like that's what I mean. Like sometimes, like it was
like, so embarrassing.
I zone in so hard, and like because I hate having to say, "Oh, could you repeat that?" Oh, like how many times are you gonna say, "Could you repeat that?" So sometimes I just smile and nod, not to be rude, and then sometimes I really try to focus and like to listen to what they're saying, but then sometimes I still just don't know. Yeah, because like they're using different words, or you know, I don't know. It's hard, man.
It is. Yeah, I mean, well, you've been living here for 2 years, so I'm pretty sure you learned a lot of like the things, and you're way more adapted into the culture now.
I mean, I'm learning still always, but like, I mean, everything is different, right? Like food, you know, what you're used to. Oh yeah, right. Like everything is so different here, right?
It's so different.
It's just like you're kind of like starting over a little bit, right?
Mm-hmm. It's really the thing that bothers me the most is when I moved here. I missed the convenience. Because
yeah.
Canada is way more inconvenient than
yeah.
the South.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say this out loud because in Canada,
I definitely miss the convenience.
Yeah.
Like, everything was just so close. Like, you want this? Okay. You want this? Okay, right?
Yeah.
But, like, now I have to plan. Like, wait till we go to Memphis.
Exactly.
Or,
like to get the Indian groceries, you have to drive 2 hours. Like, yeah,
where, like, the Walmart beside my house in Toronto, like, they kind of had everything you needed, right?
Yeah,
so,
and
like,
it's cheap, too. It's not even, like, high price. Yeah.
I mean, exactly. But I think I do definitely miss the convenience. But I think it's been an experience, like, moving down here. And I think I like the peace that it brings. Like, now, like, when I'm running around, like, I don't feel stressed out, like, when I have to go grocery shop or anything like that. Like, I can roam the aisles, read everything. Not that I usually find everything that I'm looking for, but, you know, at least, like, you're not rushing to the next thing, right? Like, I think that was the difference, like, living in a big city for so long. You know, you just feel like you're always running to the next thing and the next thing. And, like, here, I feel like I've been able to, like, kind of enjoy what I'm doing
kind
at
of
that
slow
point,
down.
right?
Yeah.
But, yeah.
So that was the major thing for you. Wasn't it, like, hard for you when
it was hard to slow down. It still is. For me, like, like some places I go and I'm just like, all right, like, I need to get going. I need to do this. And, you know, there's a lot of people who like to take their time, and that's great. But, like, sometimes it's just too slow for me. And, I mean, like, again, it's all, like, adjusting, right? But,
but I mean, it's good that we're not in a rush here. It's really calm, and it's just super nice down here. And also the weather is pretty good. It's better than Canada's.
Well, right now, but not up until, like, the spring where it gets like super hot. I was pregnant last year in the summertime, and it was not a good time.
It was bad. Yeah.
It was hot.
I was here in July, and boy, it was so humid.
Yeah.
And I couldn't stand outside.
You know, being Indian, you think, like, for people who live so close to the equator in a hot place, we know how to handle the heat, but we don't.
No.
Like, okay, I can speak for myself. I grew up in the north, so I definitely don't know how to handle the heat.
I get
but,
that.
like, you think God would have, like, gave us a little bit more, like, tools to, like, deal with the heat. Like, why, like, when it's humid outside, my hair is like a ferocious beast. Like, why? Like, why? I don't understand. Like, why couldn't God just be like, oh, you know what, at least let me give them nice hair or make them less hairy. They live in a hot place. Like, let me help them, right?
But no, it's more hair and, like, for the people in India. Yeah, that's true. And it's dense too. Like, interesting. Okay. So, what is the one thing that you want to tell the people who are immigrating to Canada or America?
I think whatever you see on TV or in the movies, that is not it, okay? Let me help you out, okay? All right, all these Bollywood movies that make, like, living in the West or, like, Canada, US, wherever, England, wherever it is you're going, it is not all that it's cracked out to be, okay? True. It is hard work. You're probably gonna have to work harder here than you did at home, okay? Like, you know, all, like, everything's not as chill. You gotta do everything for yourself, apparently. I hear that from my parents a lot. They're like, when we were in India, you know, we had this and we had that and we could do this and we could do that. And here, you know, you're on your own, man. And it sucks sometimes. Like, And I also think that, like, you know, a lot of some people may think that, oh, because, like, we live here, you know, we can afford everything, apparently. But we definitely can, like, I'm sure some people can. Because, you know, they're well-to-do or whatever the case is. But, like, you can't just ask me for, like, 6 iPhones when it comes to India.
Oh,
like,
my God, this one,
Like, how much money do you think I actually make? I can barely afford my own iPhone, okay? Like, here we are. But, like, you know?
Oh my gosh, I think, like, this is so true. Like, people think that money grows on trees once you come out, and, like,
I feel like as much as we're laughing about it, but I feel like to everybody, you know, the grass is always greener on the other side, right? Like, you know, from, like, if you're in India and you see people here, you're like, oh, their lives are so much better. They're, you know, they're living so much better or whatever. But you know, you don't see everybody's day to day, right? And then like, you know, people here are like, oh, you know, we had it so good in India, or people in India are just, you know, they get to go to eat whenever they want, or, you know, they get to enjoy all the festivals more and all this stuff and whatever. But again, you don't know their daily struggle, right? So I think it's just different for everybody. And you know, what you see is not what you're gonna get. I mean, there are really great things here, like don't get me wrong, there's a lot of opportunity, you know, to do a lot of great things, right? I mean, that's why like our families came, right?
Exactly.
You know, my grandparents, they all came and brought their families over to, like, you know, to have a better life, to give them more opportunities to grow, you know. And you know, I am thankful for that, right? Because like, if my grandparents didn't bring my mom and dad here to Canada, you know, I wouldn't have had all the opportunities, or, you know, the way I grew up, or, you know, have all the experiences that I did. Right. So, I mean, I think it's different for everybody, right? But, I mean, just, I mean, it's all hard work at the end of the day, right? Like my grandpa, he drove taxis, worked in a factory. You know, he worked like 3-4 jobs to support his family while he was here, right? Or like, you know, when they came here. And my dad too, my dad worked like 2-3 jobs every day, right? Up until, you know, they got a business, and like, you know, they worked hard to get that business, and then they worked hard in that business to give us the life that my brother and I, we live, right?
To be
or,
stable.
You know, to give us everything that we could ask for, right? To give us that stability, to give us like, you know, every opportunity that we got, and you know, now Bant and I, we're gonna work hard to give that to my son, right? To give that to Sai. You know, hopefully he doesn't have to work as hard as we do. I mean, like, that's the thing, right? With every generation that comes, you try to make it easier for the next one, generation, right? My grandparents worked super hard, right? My parents worked a little less hard, but that doesn't mean they didn't work hard, right? But I worked a little less harder than them, right? But like, that's with the opportunity that came, right?
Exactly.
If they didn't work as hard as they did, I wouldn't have had as easy as I did, right? And we're hopefully going to be able to do that for, you know, our son and the future. But
it's great. That's beautiful.
But I wish everybody lived in like mansions and drove great cars and had butlers and, you know, were able to take trips everywhere like they show you in the movie, right? Like, you know, but like, I mean, that's the life everyone aspires to have, but I don't think, and I don't think that's the reality of everybody's situation. Right?
It's not the reality, but I think you can build it once you determine yourself to.
I think you're capable of doing it, sure, but I think like coming with that notion that, you know, I'm going to Canada, or I'm going to the US, or I'm going to England, that, you know, you're going to live this grand, beautiful life. Like off the bat, no, like you're going to have to work. Right? But will you live that beautiful life? Sure, if you work hard enough, I'm sure you can, or, you know, if you get lucky enough, why not, right? Why not? But, I mean, absolutely. I think it's just different for everybody.
Right.
Like for me, like living here, this is my comfort, right? Like for me to go to India and live there, like I'm not saying I wouldn't, but it's definitely not high up on my list to ever go do, right? Like I love to go visit and stuff like that, but for me, like that's not home, right? That's not my comfort, right? I wouldn't know what to do there, right? My Gujarati is okay. My Hindi sucks. Like, what am I gonna do? Right? Like, who am I gonna talk to? Right. Or like, not that. I'm sure, like, obviously a lot of people speak English, but like, you know, you're going to another country and like, but you know, to have like the jobs and like, you know, or like everybody, the culture is always a little bit different. Right. It's true. Or like the things that you're used to, or you know, what you perceive your life to be like, or like whatever. It's always a little bit different. Right.
That's true. No, I completely get that. That's good to know that you got these experiences and that you visit India. That's good to know.
I haven't been back probably since I was like 19 or 18. Okay, it's been a long time since I've been home, like back home.
Would you ever take Sai to
India? I mean, we want to take him, but he's just not old enough right now. He's only like 4 or 5 months. But I think like Bant was born in India, right? He was about like 5-6 when he came here, right? And he loves going back, right?
That's great.
You know, for me, like my entire family's always been over here, so I visited India probably 3 or 4 times in my whole lifetime, right? But like I always enjoy going home. Like I love eating all the food and, you know, going shopping with my mom for like nice like clothes and like, you know, and we've traveled all over and you know, whatnot, and Yeah, but I just don't see myself like living there.
Right.
But I do like going back.
Right.
Like, you know.
You enjoy the vibe.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And we'll definitely take our son.
That's great. One of the things that I wanted to ask you was, do you think there's so I've heard a lot of people say that India is a third world country. Right. I don't really think that, because basically
I don't think it is.
It's not.
No.
And I just want to debunk that misconception, because all the technology that we see here today has its part from India. Like,
right.
The CEO
they
of
have
Google.
a lot of the smartest people in the world there. Like,
exactly.
You know?
I just wanted to put this out there, because
I think a third world country is like, I feel like it's not the right term you want to use. Yeah. Right? I think, like, as much as, like, every country has poverty, every country has its own issues that they deal with, right? Yeah. India, on a larger scale, because it has a very large population, right? Yeah. You may see the discrepancies more than other countries, but that doesn't mean they don't exist in other countries, right?
Exactly.
They exist here even too. In this small town. You drive from one side to the other. Yep. You see, like, the different economic status of people, how they're living, and it's very apparent, right?
It is prominent.
Like, you know, you drive from this side to this side, you see it, right?
You see the difference.
But, I mean, are we calling, like, Canada and the US a third world country? No. Right? Just because they're, you know, I don't know. They're not as populated, like, whatever it is, right? But I don't think it's right to call India a third world country when, you know, it does so many great things, or, you know, there's a lot of, like, who was it? The CEO of Pepsi? I think she's Indian, or she was Indian, or like whoever it was. Woman. I don't even know. Yeah,
I forgot her name. I'm so sorry.
The CEO of Google, whatever his name is, right?
He's
like,
Gujarati,
and I think, like, I don't think necessarily it's a very rich country. I think rich of, like, food, culture, greatness.
Yeah.
Right? I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. That's beautiful.
A lot of, like, the biggest athletes in the world are from India. Yeah. Like, all the high cricketers. Whatnot, you know?
It's just that cricket is not as popular here in the West.
I think, like, it is popular in Canada. You know,
a little bit more than the US.
I think it's not as popular in the US, but that doesn't mean it's not popular everywhere else in the world, right? It's a sport that's played everywhere else in the world.
Pretty much.
Like, just not here as much, I'm sure, right? But, you know, like, every other country has a team.
They do have
where they play, and it's a big deal.
Yeah, right. Absolutely.
Like, hundreds of thousands of people who come to watch that.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
yeah, it has a huge fan base. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Okay. So I guess we've covered pretty much all the topics here. Okay. I think, but I think there's one last question that I want to ask, and that is for Sai, actually.
Okay.
What is something that you want him to definitely catch on from the Indian culture, and something that you want to avoid?
I think what, like, personally, hopefully Pantha agrees with me. You know, I think, like, I think we want him to know where we come from.
Okay.
Right? How our values are, right? Like, you know, where our families come from, how rich our culture is, how great the food is. I want him to be able to speak Gujarati, right? So he can communicate with our families. Right. And, you know, it's just like a part of who he is, right? He has two, you know, one Canadian Gujarati parent, one American Gujarati parent, right? And as much as, like, you know, you're immersed in this Western culture, right? Like, having depth, right? Like, of, like, a love for, like, what makes you, right? Like, why, like, you know, why is he gonna look a certain way, right? Like, you want to be able to be connected to that, right? And then and, you know, hopefully he passes it along to his future children, right? And whatever that may be. And, you know, I want him to take all the good parts of it, right? Like, knowing that, like, you know, India's such a rich country of, like, culture, food, and you know, like, everything, right? Like, you know, from, like, the discipline a lot of people have for, like, work ethic and you know a lot of like it's like growing up, like you always learn to like work hard and you'll be successful, right? Or like love your family and you know, and I'm sure there are a lot of other cultures who believe all the same things, right? Like for me, honestly, I think every religion and every culture, we all learn the same things, just a different way or in a different place, right? Like everybody teaches you don't steal, right? Be a good human being, love your family, you know, try to do the right thing. And whether I learned that in a mandir, somebody else learned it in a church, somebody else learned it in a mosque or the Gurudwara or the Buddhist temple, wherever you learned it, right? And I think that's what connects all of us, right? But I think the way we get there is all different, right?
The path's different, but the destination
is all the same, right? And at the end of the day, you know, that's what connects everybody. So I think I want him to like know that, right? That like just because you look different or you speak a different language or you eat different food doesn't mean you're not connected to the next person beside you, right? But this is who you are, or this is a part of who you are, essentially, right? Like this is, you know, it's something to love about yourself. Not like when I was growing up, yes, like I probably should have loved it more than I did growing up, but it's okay that this part of you is different from everybody else, and it's okay to love that part of you, even though it is different from everybody else, because you're connected this way, but you can be different this way, and you can, that's okay. Just be
there's
proud
nothing
of it,
to be
right?
embarrassed of.
And I think like, you know, growing, like as I grew up more, as I met more Indian people, or like, you know, just became more aware of my culture, I think, you know, you meet a lot of different Indian people and they're super proud to be Indian. Like I don't think I've ever met an Indian person that was like, oh, I wish I wasn't Indian. Like, you know, as much as like we laugh about it and, you know, we make fun of like certain things, or like the way my dad might say something or like pronounce a word, or like, you know, do like silly like dance moves or like whatever, right? At the end of the day, like, you know, it's still proud to be that, right? And I think like that's the takeaway I want him to have, right? But the one thing I don't want him to take from our culture is like that perception that you're supposed to do what people expect you to do, right? Like just do, if your heart is telling you to do this and you want to do this, that's okay, right? And it may not be something I agree with, it may not be something his dad agrees with, but if he wants to, and if he can help us understand why it's so important to him, then we'll be there to support him, right? But I think like growing up, it was always like, you know, your parents try to guide you in what they know. Right? Exactly. Like this is what their parents told them and this works, so this is what we're going to teach our kids because this is what works, right?
Because they think that's the best for you at that time.
Like growing up, like being a doctor, lawyer, engineer, like that was it, right? Like that was your path to success, right? That was the path that I was given, right? Like I almost went to med school. I work in medicine, right? You are. I do, right? But because that was the path to success, right? And that was the advice I was given, right? But like for my child, I don't expect him to be a doctor, or lawyer, or businessman. Do whatever you want. He can just be whatever he wants. As long as you work hard, right? Like take that worth ethic, right? That like, you know, as a culture we have, and put 100% into whatever it is that you want to do, right? I don't care if you want to be like a violinist or an athlete or an artist, whatever it is you want to do, but put 100% in it, because I assure you, if you do, you will be successful, right? And I think that's the key, right?
That is definitely the key.
Work hard to be successful, but you don't have to do what we tell you to do at the end of the day, right?
Right. That's great. And I think you guys can evolve together, just like you said that your parents evolved with you. And I think that's beautiful. That's great.
I hope he becomes like an athlete or something cool.
Oh, like,
that's
cool.
But, I hope he's like the first NBA player with like a Patel jersey. Oh, that'd be kind of cool.
That would be so cool.
But I mean, that's a hope I have for my son, but I'm not going to like force him into it, right? Like, will I put him in basketball like classes? Sure. Like, but if he doesn't like them, then we can quit. Like, it's not a big deal to me, you know. But I think like
that's great. That's so good to hear. That is awesome. Well, this was a beautiful episode.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for taking the time out. I wasn't sure if you were gonna be able to, because I know a little newborn is a lot of work, but you do it so effortlessly.
Oh, thank you. Does it feel like that? But thank you. It does. We try. I have a lot of help. My husband, he's great. He's a great dad.
Yeah, right now he's taking
care of Sai, and he's doing. I'm sure they're having a good time together. I feel like they get up to trouble, and they just. I feel like as he gets older, him and his dad will just go out and do like crazy stuff and not tell me about it.
Right. Yeah. Well. Oh, actually, I do want to ask you another question.
Sure.
This is really cool. I should have asked this before. But how has becoming a mother changed you?
That saying, my mom, she always used to tell me when I want to do something like, I don't know, ridiculous, I guess, in her eyes, if it was ridiculous in her eyes, she'd be like, when you're a mom, you're gonna know, right? Like how I feel, right? And sometimes I get that feeling, right? Like mind you, my son is only like 5, she's about to be 5 months, right? Mm-hmm. But like sometimes like, he's like rolling around and I'm like, oh my God, like, are you okay? Like, like your heart kind of skips a beat a little bit, right? And then I think like before you're just like, like it's whatever, like, but like I think now I like you just like you're responsible for this person, right? Mm-hmm. And how that person is gonna turn out, or like you're just like, I feel like I'm so much more careful, but like I could be having the worst day ever, or like, be stressed out, or this didn't go right, or, my rotis weren't round that day, or like whatever the issue was, right? Yeah. But I take one look at my son and he gives me his little smile, and I can tell you, I don't care about anything else. You can eat my damn square roti for all I care, but my son just laughed at me because he thought it was funny, and that's okay. Yeah. And it makes everything better, and he has brought so much joy into our lives that like, my mom, when she calls me, she doesn't even care anymore about asking about if I'm doing okay. She just wants to see my son.
I know,
And then if he's sleeping or something, she'd be like, okay, bye, just call me later. Like, whatever.
When he's up,
And I'm like, what about me? Like, what about me? I'm awake. Like, why don't you talk to me, right?
Like I'm your child.
Right? But, it's just like, it's changed me a lot. Yeah. I think I have a bigger heart now. Hopefully I had a big heart before. It's just bigger. But I don't know. But like,
I think you're pretty much the same, I think. No, I mean with bigger heart, because you were always like, you had this quality of like mothering and just taking care of everybody. I've seen that personally, and I love to see that because I don't see that often in like women these days. I wish they had more of these qualities, but
it kicks in, I think, when you become a mom. I just it's been great. I love being a mom.
It's great. And how has that changed your relationship with your husband? Like, is it any different?
I think we both need a lot more sleep. That's a really big thing. But no, I think like I think it's not so much about what we want anymore, like, what me and Pant want to do. Like, before you're like, oh, like, let's go on vacation here, or let's just go take a quick trip here, or go to Memphis for the day, or, go here for the day, or whatever. Now, we're on his schedule. He is the king, and we will do whatever it is he wants to do. If he's not feeling up to it, well, then we're canceling our plans. Right. Like, so I think, like, that was a big, not a big thing, but it was a learning aspect, right? We thought, oh, like, we can just pack him up and take him with us, right? But like, no, it's on his schedule. Like, if he needs to be home by 8:30 in his like bathtub, then we need to be home by 8:30 and put him in his bathtub, right? Like, it's more about what he needs, and I think like we've gotten to that point where we will do anything for him at this point. Great. And I think like because me and Pant agree on a lot of things, and we talk about a lot of things about what we want for Sai, how we want to deal with certain situations, or how we want to take care of him, and we've had those conversations, and we talk about it, and we make sure we're like one unit, right? And I think like because like we have difference of opinions, but we try to talk it out and get on the same page, right? And it's a little bit of give and take, obviously. This is our first time being parents,
of course.
We don't really know what to do sometimes. But like, we're like, oh, we'll figure it out. And we have a lot of good we have good support systems that who are always sometimes it's like we get the advice that we need, but sometimes it's just too much advice, and you're just like, that was too much information. Like, I don't know
how to process that.
Yeah, like, and then, you know, sometimes it's not the information that we're looking for. Yeah. But, you know, we take it and we try to, like, you know, we try to do the best we can, and I think it's great that, like, he's super supportive, and we try to support each other.
That's great.
With Sai, because, like, we want him to know that we're there for him, right?
Right.
And that, like,
you're a team.
We probably tell him that, like, we love you so many times throughout the day. Like, my child is gonna be like just like
smothered in love.
Smothered in love. Like, that's all he's gonna know.
That's so
like,
sweet.
we just want to be his best friends forever. Like, I don't care if you have other friends, but your mom and dad are number one. Like, that's where we want to
That's how it should be, I think. That's great to hear. It's so heartwarming, and yeah, that's great. I think Sai is gonna have the best. No, not think. I know for sure. It's a fact that he's gonna have the best parents.
Oh, I mean, we're trying. But
well, that's great. Okay, well, now we're gonna sign off. And yeah, I want to thank my listeners for listening and sparing their time, and I want to thank Leena again for sparing time for me and for this show.
Oh yeah, and thank you for having me. This is like my first like podcast situation, and I had a really great time, and this was super fun.
Yeah, I think we're hopefully gonna have more, because we'll see if people like it. And people, if you're listening and if you like it, please leave us comments, follow us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and yeah, you can also follow our page on Instagram. That's Maple Masala Podcast. You can leave me DMs or comments, and yeah, let us know if you want to see Leena again on the show.
Let us know.
Okay, perfect. Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.